So, oh, now it just said recording.
I just turned it on.
Oh, good. All right. Well, we're at step 2, which is still early. So the biggest, I think, factor to decide if solar is for you is the reasons. I have to just be upfront. Mine wasn't to basically make my electric bill go away primarily. I think if you have a fairly high electric bill, it is a no-brainer, but there's situations where other reasons may be more important. Like in my case, it was really environmental. I know I have all this sun on my roof and I just want to go renewable and even have more electricity that the neighborhood can use rather than us using fossil fuels. And it was less so the financial aspect. But for a lot of people, it is electric and they save, and they're also, don't have to worry about electricity prices and going up, which they will. One is also energy independence. People think of, say, blackouts, with the wildfires, these preventive shutoffs and stuff. And if you have solar, you would think you're good, you have your own electricity. But there's sort of one caveat that you have to have a battery for that to work. So if you want that advantage, plan on getting a battery. And now my advancing slides isn't working. I think I have one before that. Another second. Nope, step 3. Luckily, I numbered them. So now, speaking of sizing and price, cost, and all of that. So you see my PG&E bill here, and as I said, it's pretty low. It wouldn't really, for the amount of electricity that I spend, be worth it, so to speak, just financially, to put in a big solar system. But those weren't my top reasons. What I wanted to show here is that most of our PG&E bills are electricity, as you see in red, and gas in blue. So in this situation, the gas charge is actually more than electricity. And as you see in that little chart on bottom left, of course, during the summer, a little lower because it's mostly heating. Most of our houses, mine's from 42, and had a gas space heater and a gas hot water heater and a gas stove. So then the question arises, if I want to maximize my system and as much as possible use my own electricity, then I would need electric appliances, right? And that's what we call electrifying. And I did that, but that, of course, is another financial aspect. That figures into your sizing, because my electricity bill back here is very low, but if I add heating and cooling that's electric, and an electric stove and all that, it will go up. So I'll need more panels. If I want an electric car, that's another chunk I need to add to my plans. And when I say think bigger picture, to me, it was also, I wanted to produce more than I would necessarily, need or use myself, because what we feed into the grid is used by somebody and likely replaces fossil fuels. So somehow I managed to block my clicking, but I have to forward otherwise. So I'm going to talk about the battery and electrification for a moment. It's not necessarily relevant for all of you, but I think it's an important aspect. So should you get a battery? You see here, view into my garage, electric power, that big black box. And by the way, electric power is a San Leandro company. I'm very happy that worked out that way. So I did get one. And as I said, if you want to be safe during blackouts, your solar panels will not deliver unless you have a battery. But the bigger reason for me actually to get it is that you can reduce what I call, well, it's kind of jargony, strain on the grid during peak demand. And what that means is that you have your own electricity during the day, and sun's shining, juices flowing, but in the evening it's dark. That's when you cook, that's when you turn on your TV, that's when your computer goes on, more lights go on, but your panels are dark, right? So then you pull on the grid. Everybody else does the same thing. So in the evening, there's a higher demand on the grid. Now, if you have your battery, you filled it up during the day, right? And then in the evening, you just pull from your own battery. You're not straining the grid. You're not taking anything out of the grid. You still depend on the grid, your grid tied, but you basically use what you made during the day in the evening. So that way you can really take a load off the grid. And as we'll see, for me, I use only my own electricity, and it's just really cool to not even bother with what PG&E does and what prices they might have, because I have my own. But it's a price consideration. It does add a chunk of money. And on the electrification end of things, you see here my old 80s space heater gas run. There was just one for the whole house. In addition to being pretty inefficient, it was also not very comfortable. It just heated right there, that area. So I really also wanted better heating. And so I decided to replace all the heating so I can run it with my own solar and not use fossil fuels. There's also an indoor air pollution component that I wasn't even aware of, but gas appliances actually churn out a lot of stuff that's, especially for sensitive people, really not that great. I also noticed with the new appliances, I got heat pumps, I'll show you in a moment. They heat much more comfortably. I just feel like that's improved as well. Oops, let me go here. So just a quick visual of what those look like, because heat pumps, to a lot of people, I don't know what they look like. You can't go to Home Depot and look at one. I didn't know anybody who had one. It's actually kind of a new technology, although the companies who install them do them a lot. This is really a trend. And I understand why. They're so, it's just amazing. They, instead of heating air, they move air. They basically suck warm air out of the outdoor air and push it into your room. That's how you heat. And the same with cooling. And that's why you have an outdoor unit that you see here at the bottom left, and indoor units. One of them is on the top left, and that's in one of my rooms. You usually have several of those top units. They can go at the bottom of your wall also. Hot water heaters that work with a heat pump look just like regular ones, about the same size, but they are also using heat from the ambient air to heat the water and are electric. So that little sort of detour on the battery and electrification. Patty, how am I doing on time? Do I need to speed it up a little? Patty's already fallen asleep.
You're at 12. You're about 12 right now, so you need to like pick up the pace.
Yeah. Okay, good, because this is, I think, my last slide. So big question, and I think most folks, and I certainly did, struggled with this. So how do you get quotes? How do you select an installer? How do you even select the company you're going to ask for a quote? And I'm just going to share my personal experience. I'm going to ask my fellow solar residents to talk about theirs. I got 4 quotes, at least 3 is recommended. And keep in mind, they're usually not apples to apples. And that's because, different components, there's different solar panels, there's different inverters, there's different batteries. And it's really overwhelming at first to know, well, should I get panel type X versus the other one that this other company is suggesting? And I have a few resources to share at the end that help with that. I talked to a lot of people who had electrified, and the few that I found, and got recommendations from them. But in the end, when I got the quotes, it really came down to the conversation I had. In some cases, like I have to say with SunPower, it was really kind of a marketing pitch, and I knew the person putting in the system wouldn't be the person I initially spoke with. And so I think it's good to talk to the people who actually put in your system. And that's why I went with Sunstree Solar, whom I love, because they also are still in touch. And if I have a question, I can call. Ben is even on this webinar today. So go with your gut feeling, not necessarily the lowest cost, and who you like working with. I think I'm going to leave it with that. I have sort of financial stuff, but I think that gets kind of detailed. We can get to that if we want to, but I think I want to open it up to questions and, or actually rather first have Amy, Jess, and Rob talk a little bit about their systems. Amy, do you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Amy. I live over on Broadmoor. So I was doing a little bit of research. My panels got installed in 2018, but I had been doing some research before that and, asking people who had solar, kind of getting a couple of names of people. And then the city of San Leandro had an event where they were talking about the SunShares program. And I went, and it was very disappointing that there were maybe a handful of people who showed up for this. And what SunShares is, kind of in a nutshell, is that there's kind of an agreement that some of these companies have made with certain cities to provide a certain discount. So basically, as a resident, you're getting this discount that the city, when the city has to install solar on their buildings, you get to benefit from those discounts. So basically, the city, in essence, and SunShares had vetted all these companies. So I think there were like 3 or 4 companies that showed up that night when I went to the meeting, and they each had tables so you could talk to them afterwards. And one of them was actually a company, Peterson Dean, that I had looked into because they also did roofs. My solar panels are actually on my detached garage. And the reason why I knew I wanted to do that is because it faces south. So it's going to get the most sun versus on my house, which is got a more steeper roof than my garage. So we decided we were going to just redo our roof ourselves because it wasn't that high up and it was really easy to do. We did end up having to put a new beam in to be able to support the weight of the solar panels. So that was kind of fun putting that in, but we did that work ourselves. So I did get bids from some of those people, those companies that were there. And I ended up choosing Solar Technologies. They installed a SunPower system. And I really was, I wanted to have a US company. At the time when I got it, there was all the business with some of these companies going under and the Chinese solar panels, and I really wanted US made. The other reason why I went with SunPower is because they are vertically integrated. The whole system is made by them. It's not like my inverters are by somebody else. So I have a 25-year warranty and it's on everything. I don't have to worry like, oh, I have to call the inverter company or I have to call the solar panel. It's one company that I have to deal with. And I really like that. The other reason why I went with them is because their panels produced more power per panel than Peterson Dean's. So the panels I have put out 320 watts each. And I was very limited on the space on my garage. So to get the same power with the other company, they would have had to put on 16 panels, which would have been kind of iffy because it would have had to go too far over. And I don't think the fire department would have liked that because they need to have a perimeter be able to walk on if they ever have to like punch a hole because of fire. So I have 14 panels and the system's not much different than yours, Stephanie, about 4.4. And I really like the software program, like just before this meeting, I had never even looked up, but I decided to look up just some data and it was just so easy to get like, oh, what, they told me the estimate that the system should produce about 6.8 kilowatt hours. That's what I looked at my original quote for this meeting. And then I went to look at the previous years and I was able to easily pull up the data. It didn't actually meet 6.8, but we had weird days last year, right? When the whole sky was orange, right? So I've been very happy with the system. And I like the fact that SunShares kind of did the vetting for me. So I knew I didn't always worry, when you go to buy a car and you're thinking, oh, am I going to get the best price? Those prices were pretty well established and it didn't really vary too much from these. I felt like the price that I got was, I felt comfortable with it. So, but I will say something that you said, Stephanie, is like really think ahead. So when I got my system, I have a Chevy Volt and I didn't anticipate that my college-age son, when he returned from college, was also going to get an electric car, which he did. So I hadn't anticipated that, but when you look at how much I actually had to pay in addition that year when he was here charging his car and I was charging my car, it was maybe $30 a month, which now he charges it because there's one where by his work. So anyway, just plan, yes, anticipate what other things you want or think you might get. You're muted, Stephanie, so if you're speaking.
Classic mistake, presenter. Thanks, Amy. I spotted a few questions in the chat that are for you, if you want to respond. Let's see, maybe we'll just go through. Jess, want to talk a little bit about your very new system?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. I'm Jess. So I have solar panels on my roof, but they are not actually producing power yet. They are not on. So I'll just talk a little bit about the process so far and where I'm at. I actually worked with this guy called Marty Russo, who's an industrial engineer who focuses on solar panel projects. His payment actually comes from the referral fee from the solar company we chose. So I'm sure we probably could have got a better deal if we'd gone directly to the solar providers, but I kind of wanted someone to figure out how many panels we needed, get some quotes for us, answer all my questions. And he's more familiar with a lot of the companies. So he was a good source of knowledge. And I don't have to pay for it. So it worked out well. So what happened, the process was that I sent Marty a few recent power bills so you could calculate how many solar panels we needed. We also talked about future. So we knew we wanted to get air conditioning installed. So we talked about, we'd want a little bit of extra power for that. Maybe someday we'd want to get an electric car. So kind of planning for what would happen in the future, not necessarily just what our power bill is right now. He designed an initial setup based on the shape of our roof. So he looked at one of those overhead maps where you can kind of see like what part of the roof gets the most sun. And then we chose a solar provider based on 3 quotes that he gathered for us. And I'll talk a little bit about those quotes and how we chose which one we wanted to go with. Once we chose someone, they came out and inspected our roof, made sure that it was in pretty good shape, and it was. We signed off on a final design. Then we had to wait for all the permits to be approved. Finally, once that happened, the installers came out and put the panels on our roof, hooked everything up to the electrical system. So where we're at right now is we're waiting to get the final inspection done by the city of San Leandro. And unfortunately, it's taking a long time. We're kind of stuck at this point for 2 months now. Because first the installers who were contracted out to, put everything on the roof, I guess they didn't finish the job and then the company went under. So we failed inspection the first time because it wasn't ready. And then there were just a ton of mix-ups with when the city was going to come out, when the solar people were going to come out, and we kept having to reschedule us. So maybe next week we'll get it turned on. We know it works because they turned it on earlier this week for just a day to make sure that it's finally working and all ready and, functional. And it is, I could look at the app and see how much power was being generated. So works, we just need to flip it on. So I want to talk about a little bit about the 3 quotes that we got. So the lowest one was 18 panels from Synergy for $22,000 total. All these had loans attached to them so that you could, put $0 down and just pay a monthly fee until you pay it off, just a loan. We decided we just wanted to pay upfront for it because the companies gave a cash discount if we did that, and we just wanted to pay it off and not worry about a loan. So the numbers I'm going to talk about, they're not, if you're paying cash, it would be a little bit less because they do have a discount attached. So Synergy was the lowest one at $22,000. SunPower was the highest one, but it was only 15 panels instead of 18 because they're more efficient. And the cost was $30,000 if we had done a loan. However, they gave us a 17% discount for paying cash upfront. And then, of course, there's the 26% federal tax credit at the end of the year that we'll get as well. So won't really end up being $30,000, but that was kind of like the initial quote if we've been getting a loan for it. We decided to go with Sun Power, just like Amy, because we liked that they were more efficient. We only needed 15 panels instead of 18. They had that, cash discount that we liked. The panels actually have micro inverters built in, so you don't have to have like a big box on the side of your house like some of the others. And then, like Amy mentioned, we really liked that it was all built by one company, so we don't have to worry about 3 different warranties. It's all through Sun Power. So yeah, that's pretty much where we're at now.
That's, it's so funny that you talked about the city's inspection, because that was actually kind of a big lift in my case as well. And like first there were just like some stickers missing, and then they came back, it was a different inspector, and then they found other stuff. And I mean, in the end, there was never a question that it would pass, but I have a feeling it might also be, there aren't that many solar systems, not as many as people want to build, whatever, other, permitting issues. But yeah, you're not the only one there. Thanks so much for sharing. And please, folks, continue with the questions in the chat. And I think we're going to go to Rob.
Hi, thanks. My name's Rob Rich. We've lived here in San Leandro for 20 years. And one of the reasons we purchased our house was because we live in the Broadmoor. It was built in 1925. It was a 3-bedroom, 1-bath. It had great solar exposure on the south side. The house is sort of long and had great south-facing roof. It took us a while to save up enough money or to earn enough money to buy solar, and solar prices came down. So in 2015, we put on a 2,000 watt system. I'm not sure these numbers are the same as what other people are using. So I'm not an expert on this, but we put on a system, and I didn't do my research, and I recommend everybody that's been saying doing your research, you should do your research. I got a nice email from a company that's no longer in business, and they offered me a $1,000 discount on the system, and it seemed affordable, and their marketing was great. So I went with them. We went with them, and it took forever to get the system up and running, and that they were large, and they eventually went out of business. But it worked great for us. We would try to mostly handle our electrical load, maybe a little bit under, and that's the way it worked. And then in 2019, we got a electric vehicle, a Chevy Bolt, and so we added a second set of panels onto our roof. And this time I did some research, and what I really wanted to make a difference between the first time and the second time was that installation interface, that understanding who's doing the installation, who do I talk to if there's a problem in this installation. I think it was Stephanie was saying earlier that it's good to maybe check out the quality of your roof beforehand. And so when we did our first solar, we were putting a small addition on the back, adding a bathroom basically. And so we re-roofed at that time. And so we were trying to coordinate our roof work with an excellent local roofer with the big solar company. And it didn't work at all. I could talk to the marketer. There was a marketer, there was a project manager, there was the installer. And the further you went down the road, the harder it was to talk to anybody. So the next time we ended up with a small installer that came well referenced. I've heard other names mentioned, so I'll mention the name of this company, Super Solar. We're very happy with them. And so the second time we did not add a new inverter. So we had a solar panel system might be consist of the panels and an inverter that changes the direct current to the alternating current that you can use, or maybe it's the other way around. I don't know. I'm not an electrician. But I think Jess was just talking about panels with inverters incorporating it. That sounds very cool. So the second time we did not add an inverter, we just added panels. And so the effect of that is that sometimes we have a little bit of spillover because we can actually generate more during like the summer solstice electricity than we can, the inverter can handle. But we drive the car about 5,000 miles a year, and it seems to be covering that just fine. So I would say the lesson learned for us is, who do you talk to if there's an issue during the installation? And who do you talk to if there's an issue after the installation? And the first time was a swing and miss for us on that. And the second time feels like we've hit a home run. So that's our experience.
Very cool. Did you ever miss, or do you ever miss having a battery out, or how does it work with your sort of feeding in the grid, taking from the grid? How does that pencil out for you?
That's a great question. So we've been looking into battery, but sort of we're on the phased kind of cycle, and so we haven't taken that. We have an unusual inverter. And it's by Sunny Boy. And if there's some installers on here, they may be familiar with it. This is an inverter that has I forget what they call it, SPC or something. You can plug into the inverter when the power goes out. And you can, you can run an extension cord and get whatever the inverter is pushing out at that time. You could certainly charge a phone. But when I tried to plug in the vacuum cleaner, it had startup power, and that did not work. And that flipped the switch, and I had to reset it. So that's how we're doing it right now. One of the things that I was surprised at when I did my homework before, as much as I did before this meeting here tonight, was how wildly it varies between the amount of energy that we generate during the winter solstice compared to the summer solstice. So if the power goes out in January or December, even if I have a battery, it's going to be hard to maintain normal load for very long. That size of that battery is going to be determinant of it. And I'm not here to size any of these things, but it's not unusual. It doesn't seem for there to be a 5 times difference between the amount of energy that we're generating in the winter and in the summer, even though our electrical, because we still have gas heat, is pretty consistent throughout that time. So we don't have battery backup, but we can plug in an extension cord to this particular Sunny Boy inverter.
Right.
I want to address that too, Stephanie.
Go ahead.
So when I was getting mine, because I had a Chevy Volt with the V, all the solar people reminded me, well, because at the time batteries wasn't a big thing. They said, well, your car is your backup battery, which in essence is true, because my electric car has a battery in it, and that could be used to charge phones. I don't know that it would be convenient to keep my refrigerator going, but in essence, an electric car, you have backup battery, assuming your car was charged. Just saying.
We're actually working on technology to take that electric car, and be able to put out electricity during times of need or whatever. So that's actually something that I've heard is going on.
And I just now remember that we actually had meant to do a little poll with you guys, because I was just thinking, I'm wondering where all you participants are at. If are people looking for batteries, or it's clear to you, no, that's not going to be a battery. Oh, great, Kirsten. Here's our quick poll. Let's take a look here. What's your main interest tonight? Just solar panels and backup battery, also electrification like I did, or maybe something else. Surprisingly, many are actually interested in electrification. I wasn't sure if that would, we had done a survey, and not a lot of people said, I'm interested in electrifying. And there's interest in batteries. I'm wondering if it might be helpful to actually show you a couple more slides on costs that I did both for my system, battery, and electrification. Thanks, Kirsten. I think we can probably close the poll right now. Thanks all for voting.
I just want to remind you though, Stephanie, we only have 15 minutes left for questions.
Right. We also have Jason from Bayron here, who works a lot on the rebates for electrification. That is important. I'll just rattle off a few numbers. So for my heat pumps, a rebate, there's a $1,000 rebate if you go, say, from a gas heater to a heat pump electric system, and $1,000 for the heat pump hot water heater. So there are good rebates out there. And also they're great at hooking you up with an advisor. Jason actually was my energy advisor. So you can actually have an individual person, no obligation, no cost, no anything, and just say, hey, I'm trying to figure out what next step to take. Can you help with that? What are more questions out there if we're,
I would like to just take the opportunity though, while we're going to move into questions, to put up the grid alternative slide so that we can show folks that might be interested what that looks like very briefly.
Yeah, let me go through my slides again. So we and also want to share some other resources with you, but let's go to this one, Patty.
Yeah. So I just really quickly wanted to cover that there are some low income programs out there for both homeowners and coming soon, potentially, renters as well. And so this particular program is through Grid Alternatives. It is a fairly local nonprofit that does solar installations for low-income homeowners. The income requirements that you see here are shown on the screen. So if you have any interest in that or qualify, you can definitely get a hold of Grid Alternatives. Ambassa is here tonight, and if anybody wants to pop a question into the chat as well, he would be available to answer that. Otherwise, you can give them a call. And then I also want to mention that I have had a conversation with East Bay Community Energy about a multifamily / renters program that's coming to, well, San Leandro and everywhere that EBCE serves. That is a community solar program. And that program is going to enable folks in these income qualifying levels to get 20% discount off their solar electric bill if they sign up for this program. I mean, there's nothing more than signing up and you get 20% off. So that's actually a project that, we've got to find I want to say, a support or sponsor for that in San Leandro, and then it's gonna hopefully come online. So we're probably looking 2 years out, but stay tuned through EBCE, and that's all I got.
And I'll just tack on to that with a few other ways to save. So Patty was just presenting Grid Alternatives that is tied to income levels, but there are other programs. Amy had shared her experience with Sun Shares, and here and in the slides we'll share is the website and just sort of what their current deal is. So they have installer referrals. You see they actually have an informational session coming up in October, and then you get the 15% discount on solar and 10 on battery storage. That's, I don't have personal experience, but that's a way to save. And there's also Sunwork. Sunwork is a nonprofit installer. A friend of mine actually used them, and they say on, and she can confirm that they're below, they say a third below conventional costs. So say my system, the panels and inverter and electric panel were roughly 12,000, if I remember that right. So a third below that is significant, but they only serve folks who have fairly small energy bills because they want to make sure people get solar because they can and not just because they have to save money. So check out Sunwork. And Jason, I'm going to put you on the spot. You said you know Sunwork. Do you want to say a few quick things about them?
I would sure be happy to do that. So sunwork.org is, as she had mentioned, nonprofit. I've had probably 4 to 5 dozen homeowners become qualified through sunwork.org. They do have, essentially they install solar at cost. So right now they're averaging between 75 cents a watt and $1.50 watt installed, where the national average is about $2.85 a watt. Bay Area, as mentioned this evening, and folks' costs that they found out from higher prices, somebody might spend $30,000 or $25,000 on a 5 kilowatt system, and through Sunwork, you might spend $5,000. And that is installed with inverters. The labor is done by volunteers, so a couple of our engineers volunteer there. If I lived in the Bay Area, I sure as heck would definitely volunteer for them. They also have a brand new heat pump water heater pilot program, so that's something to look into.
Yeah,
so
I think you as a homeowner can also volunteer if you're the hands-on kind and want to learn how this works. Sunworks would let you in on it. And I'm gonna go quickly through a couple more resources to
what if they can get these resources by downloading the slides. I think we should go to questions.
Yeah.
Okay,
I can
well,
jump in
we have
here.
question. That's great. Okay,
Do you
let
want
me
to stop screen sharing?
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. All right. Sorry,
Now we
Jason.
have a lot, so
Oh, good. I didn't see this. Okay, go ahead, Patty. Do you have any questions?
well, I don't know.
I can
You
do
want
it.
to take? Have you selected some, Kirsten? I mean, it's kind of hard here to.
There's a lot. Let me find a good one. How did you all prioritize solar versus other upgrades needed for old houses like plumbing, sewer, rewiring, etc.? That's a good question. Thanks, Nicole.
Well, I would say in my case, I did have to deal with some dry rot and a leaking roof, and that was definitely the first one before the solar, or like, I mean, yeah, first things first. Yeah, it's kind of a no-brainer. I don't know, other folks.
We waited 15 years, so it took us a long time. But we did seismic retrofit first, and San Leandro's got a great program on doing that yourself.
Indeed. How long do the panels last before you have to replace them? It's a good question. Anybody?
I don't know, but supposedly you have to clean them. Like when we had all that soot from the fires, I mean, we did get up and on our roof and clean the solar panels.
I can answer that a little bit. So solar panels last an average of about 20 to 30 years of age if they're maintained. They can last much longer, technically, hypothetically, indefinitely, but it's a matter of keeping them maintained. Yes, washing them. You want to have that done by a professional because they can crack if it's too hot out. Use cold water. It could be the end of your water, your solar panel. So definitely have those looked at. If you have, say, a grid or an array that's out in the yard somewhere rather than on the roof, the earth moves a lot more than our houses do. So those need to be adjusted. The actual solar arrays need to be adjusted for expansion and contraction every 3 years or so. But totally worth it to go solar. So
Another question, do you have to upgrade wiring on your house to do this?
That's a good question. So anytime we come across folks with knob and tube, that's usually a good long conversation, and there's different reasons why to replace that. Sometimes folks can get away with it. Sometimes they've got an upgrade they did in the 80s, 90s, or early 2000s or later, where they upgraded the panel, but somehow they were still able to keep knob and tube throughout the house. So what we also find out is that a lot of companies or solar companies will tell a homeowner, you've got only 100 amps, and we're going to have to upgrade you to a 200 amp to make this work, which is usually totally not necessary. It's way overkill. So a lot of communities, CCAs, Peninsula Clean Energy, East Bay Community Energy, they're really trying to focus on conservation of electricity and gas, or elimination of gas. And it's pretty important, I'd say, to get as many estimates as you can, as many opinions. And then one of the slides there that was going to be shown was energysage.com. It's the Bible and the best resource really to go to, best unbiased. They have more web traffic than all other solar companies combined. It's an excellent site to go to if, say, sunwork.org or sunshares.org doesn't work for you.
I would say on the wiring upgrade, if you electrify like I did, you may need more capacity just because you're adding electricity that was previously gas powered. I also spotted an important question here that I don't really have an answer to, but I wonder if somebody else does, and that's about leasing. So there's the option to lease and no money down panels. I personally have heard not so great things about it. The arguments I hear, no own experience, because I always wanted to buy mine. But one issue is that when you want to sell or when you move out or want to sell, you have to deal with the system, or there's some issue there. Do folks have input? Linda, I think, asked that. Any knowledge?
I think my neighbor leases and he's been just getting screwed because I think they lock you into some price based on what the price of electricity. I don't know. He got a bad deal on his from leasing, and that left a bad taste in my mouth about like not leasing. And I've heard the same stories about when you go to sell your house. Now there are ways to, and I forget about this, that you can get a loan and then it's through your taxes, through your property taxes, so that if you do sell your house, then the next person is paying off that loan through the property taxes. And I forget if that program is still around through the county to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know two people, and that's funny that you mentioned that, Amy. My neighbor too, now I remember, has panels, and he's not leased panels, and he comes out even. So there's basically, he doesn't see savings. It's not like a negative, like suddenly he'd pay more, but he also felt he didn't get the savings he was promised. But he does have cleaner energy, if that's any consolation.
Question about,
oh.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, with leases, I've heard a lot of headaches from homeowners that even have lease systems that they're trying to get out of. And it is true, they're locked into kind of a lifetime cost. And true ups tend to be larger payments at the end of the year or bi-yearly. So definitely watch out for leases and try to stick with either cash purchases or nonprofits, or some sort of loan process would be probably more ideal.
So if you do say, like a lot of our panelists bought it outright, does that increase the value of your house if you sell? Say you're not going to stay 20 or 30 years. Does that investment increase your value?
I'd say so, especially if it's paid off, right? Or if it's not something that's tied into a lease that basically an add-on to the house that the homeowner may not, or the new homeowner or buyer may not want to have to worry about. It's kind of almost like having a lien on a house when you've got or a lien on something when you've got to pay off someone else's investment. So,
I mean, it is an upside as much as I can gauge if you own it. Like real estate folks say, 4% increase on the value of your home. It probably depends on how old the system is. But if I look at, say, if I sold my house tomorrow, it would fetch more. It would basically pay the panels, like what I paid for the panels, it would now be worth more. Of course, I'm not selling it tomorrow, so does that matter to me? But it's a good point. It should increase your value.
Question here about why should one install a heat pump? And I ordered this myself, which is why I'm bringing it up. But why should one install a heat pump-based hot water heater versus an electric hot water heater? And my understanding of that is the efficiency of the unit. So heat pumps, both the hot water and the heater are high efficiency appliances. So it doesn't take as much electricity to give you hot water through a heat pump as it does just an electric hot water heater.
Exactly. Yeah. So go ahead, Patty. What?
No, I just wanted to throw one more thing in, another plug-in for heat pump air conditioner / heaters. And that is, because I live next to somebody with an air conditioner, they are quiet. You will not hear it, versus this that I have, outside my window, because they have an air conditioner.
Yeah.
And so you've got efficiency, you've got, and you've got a air conditioner, and you've got, a quiet unit.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I really wanted just a heater, but they come heating and cooling. So, well, nice bonus. I now have cooling. But I really started to nerd out on the efficiency. I love the fact that heat pumps, like the name says, they pump warm air from A to B rather than heating cold air. And that's just more efficient. You need less energy to do that. So even if you have no solar panels and you replace an electric heater with a heat pump heater, you'll save because they have like 3 times the efficiency.
So it's 7:30, folks.
Yeah.
So maybe we can stay on and answer a few more questions, but that's officially the end of the program. Thank you so much, Stephanie and friends, solar friends.
Indeed. Thank you everybody for attending as well, and fantastic questions and expressing interest in this awesome program. Thank you all for so much information. If there's any quick questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat and I will ask them.
Just as a closing item too, we will have this on our website. The library will have it on their YouTube channel, and we'll send a follow-up email with links to those resources that are in the slides.
And of course, I have to do a shameless plug for San Leandro 2050. Since you know want to find those slides, so yeah, we have a Facebook page and Instagram, and we have an e-newsletter and sanleandro2050.org, easy to remember. Check us out and keep in touch.
And a huge thank you to San Leandro 2050 for partnering with the library and being willing to try this angle on solar. It's been fantastic. And I don't know if you saw the chat, but everybody's been very delighted. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to stop the recording.